In our science course, we're going to try to teach you to be a scientific detective. And I use that term advisedly because I know that a lot of times the work a scientist does is very similar to work a detective does. We look at the evidence we have. In our case, it's observations and all the data we gather. And the detective does the same thing. And then we use it to make conclusions or inferences. And I'm going to go through about this whole idea of the difference on the way in this video. Alright, back to basics. Observations are anything we detect with our senses. So we're responding to our environment and we're using not only our sight, but in science we use our smell, our touch, our hearing as well. Very few experiments we're going to do in science are going to be dealing with tasting things, but it can happen. So we must make sure we make everything there. So when we do an observation, we should put everything we can smell, touch, hear and see in there. Not only what we see, but the other senses come in as well. So when we're doing these things, there are two types of observations we can make. And we can see here, qualitative ones are simply, yes, it's there, or no, it's not there. So, did it bubble? Yes, there were bubbles. That's an observation. That's a qualitative observation. If we then decide on to count the number of bubbles, that becomes a quantity or a number. So we can see there are two slightly different things. Now, normally in your science class, you're going to be asked to write your observations, what you see, smell, feel, and hear, right? Your qualitative observations in sentence form. And then the quantitative observations are done in tables and they've got the numbers on it. And this is common for every science lab. We do those sort of things. We combine, we write down as much as we possibly can. We gather our evidence. And this is our observations and our quantitative and qualitative observations. So once we've done this, we have to make sure that we have got everything we need. We try to get as much down as possible. Now this is a common fault of many students. They get there and they forget to write down what they see, hear, smell and feel. They forget to put that down because that's part of the picture. The numbers are part of the picture and together they give me a much better view of what is going on. So I should write everything down at all times. Now, what we then try to do is we try to make sense of it. We try to make sense of our observations and we call that an inference. What we do is all the things we've learnt in our class, so all the things we've learnt about a particular topic, we try to use that information and transfer that information to explain what we have seen and gathered, the data we've gathered and the observations we've gathered. Together we try to come up with a reasonable guess basically of what we think happened. And that is called an inference. So when we're doing our things, if we see something happen and we see the numbers and it all corresponds, then we think about what we've learned or what we've read or what videos we've seen on the topic. All these things, all we've learned about this topic comes together. So what the problem is our logical explanations or inferences can vary because what you see and what I see might be two different things. I might miss something that you see and you might miss something that I see. So between us, we've only got an approximate idea of what's going on, but it acts as a starting point from where we can push onwards. With every observation, there can be more than one possible reason it happened. So we can make many inferences based upon observations. But the number of inferences tends to be less than the total number of observations we have. because we allow our mind to look at all the possibilities before settling on one. So how about we have a look at a couple of things? All right, we're sitting down in the school one day and suddenly we hear that a student is asked to go to the principal's office, right? So that's picked up by our senses, we hear it. And then we see this student walk by towards the principal's office. Most of us will simply have this inference in our head, he or she is in trouble and they're going to the principal's office to be reprimanded. There could be lots of other reasons that person is going to the office, but we don't know enough. So the amount of our observations is limited, so our inference is not going to be too accurate. Let's consider another option. When you have been inside, you've been to the local movie theatre, and you come outside and you find that the footpath outside the movie theatre is wet. Immediately you think, it's rained. While I've been in there, it's rained. And that was a natural inference, but it might not be the case. The street cleaners might have been out. There could have been other things we don't know about. So we have to be careful with making inferences. We don't take them to be absolute truths. We have to then go and gather more and more and more information until we have enough to make a conclusion.